It happened so fast, I didn't even get the chance to put down my coffee. 1 second, I was walking through the marble lobby toward the elevators. The next, a white fist slammed into my jaw like it had been waiting for me all morning. The sting burned through my skin, my teeth clacked together, and my paper cup exploded in my hand, dark roast dripping down my sleeve. I stumbled back, tasting copper. The room froze around me. People stopped mid-step. Someone gasped. What the hell was that? I asked, my voice even, though my cheek throbbed. He didn't answer. Instead, he stepped forward again, one hand twitching near his belt like he was ready for round two. Step back, he barked, voice low and dangerous. You don't belong here. A murmur rippled through the small crowd gathering near the glass entrance. Some pulled out their phones. Others just watched, eyes darting between us like they were deciding whether to interfere or enjoy the show. I kept my gaze locked on him. I'm here for an interview. Yeah? With who? His tone dripped with disbelief, like I'd claimed I was the mayor. My cheek still burned, but my voice stayed calm. With the editor-in-chief. I'm covering the corruption hearings downtown. You can check the guest list. Hawkins snorted, lips curling. Sure. And I'm the Pope. I could have argued. I could have shouted. Instead, I reached into my jacket pocket, slow and deliberate, because I knew exactly how men like Hawkins saw sudden moves from men like me. My fingers closed around the familiar cool metal. I pulled out my press badge, flipping it toward him so the gold letters caught the light. The word press stared back at him in bold black print above my name, Marcus Ellison. And then I said it quiet enough for him to hear, loud enough for everyone else to catch. A big mistake. His jaw twitched. For a second, he didn't move. Then, almost imperceptibly, his grip on his belt loosened. Behind us, a woman's voice broke through the tension. I saw the whole thing. A middle-aged woman in a navy business suit stepped forward, phone in hand. Her voice was sharp, like she'd been waiting to use it. You hit him before he even said a word. He didn't do anything. Hawkins's eyes darted toward her, then back to me. Ma'am, this man was acting suspicious. No, she cut in. You were acting suspicious. The crowd stirred. I could feel their mood shifting, not in my favor, exactly, but away from him. That's how these moments work. People rarely rush to defend you, but they'll happily pile on someone who looks like they might lose. Look, Hawkins muttered, straightening his uniform. We can sort this out inside. I wiped a smear of coffee from my jacket and looked him dead in the eye. No, we're sorting this out right here. A man in a charcoal suit, sharp as a razor, appeared from behind the reception desk. His expression was tight, calculated, the look of someone who'd just walked into a PR disaster and was already thinking about damage control. Mr. Ellison, he said, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Please, come with me. I didn't move. Not until I know if you're inviting me in for the interview we scheduled, or to cover up what just happened. The lobby went still again. Phones were still recording. Somewhere outside, a siren wailed. Hawkins shifted uncomfortably, his earlier bravado leaking away. But I wasn't done, not yet. Because here's the thing, I said, holding my badge up again for the crowd. I don't just report the news. I make it when I have to. I could feel every set of eyes on me, the tension coiling like a spring. Hawkins opened his mouth, maybe to apologize, maybe to double down. But then a deep, authoritative voice from the far end of the lobby cut through. Security office, now. A tall black man in a dark gray blazer strode toward us. His presence was like a tide, silent but impossible to ignore. His ID badge read Building Operations Director. Hawkins, he said, voice clipped, go to the office. Now. But sir. Now. The crowd parted as Hawkins walked off, shoulders hunched, muttering something under his breath. The director turned to me. Mr. Ellison, I am deeply sorry. This will be addressed immediately. I nodded, but I knew this wasn't over. It never is. Because tomorrow, Hawkins could do this to someone without a badge, someone without a crowd, someone who wouldn't have a voice afterward. And I wasn't going to let that slide. That's when I decided my next article wouldn't just cover the corruption hearings downtown. It would cover the corruption right here, in this building, in the uniforms of men like D. Hawkins. I pulled out my phone and started recording. This was going to be bigger than an apology. The director ushered me into a small glass-walled conference room just off the lobby. The irony of the clear walls wasn't lost on me. Transparency on the outside, controlled narrative on the inside. He closed the door and sat across from me, folding his hands neatly on the table. Mr. Ellison, I want to make it clear that the building's management does not condone the behavior you just experienced. Officer Hawkins will face consequences. I studied his face. His words were precise, measured the kind you hear from someone who's done this before. A rehearsed apology. Consequences? I asked. Like a suspension until this blows over, or actual accountability? His jaw flexed. That depends on the findings of our internal investigation. Right? I said, leaning back in the chair. And who's conducting this investigation? Our head of security, along with HR. So the same department Hawkins works under? I let the question hang, my tone dripping with the skepticism it deserved. He exhaled through his nose. I understand how this may look, but we have procedures. Let me save you the trouble, I interrupted. I've been in this business long enough to know how your procedures work. Step 1. Stall until the story dies. Step 2. Quietly reinstate the offender. Step 3. Hope no one notices. A flash of irritation crossed his face, gone almost as quickly as it appeared. Mr. Ellison, if you want to file a formal complaint. Oh, I'll do more than that, I said, pulling my phone from my pocket. The recording was still running, the red dot blinking at the top of the screen. This isn't just about me. I'm going to talk to every employee in this building who's had a run-in with Hawkins. And then I'm going to write an article so thorough your legal team will have to read it 3 times just to find something to deny. His hands tightened slightly, knuckles paling. If you intend to publish, I will publish, I cut in. And it'll be factual, documented, and airtight. You won't be able to bury it under PR spin. For a moment, the room went still. Then he sat back, expression smoothing over like a poker player folding a bad hand. I can't stop you, but understand you might make enemies in the process. I smiled without humor. I make enemies for a living. Outside the conference room, the lobby had mostly cleared. The woman in the navy suit who had spoken up earlier was still there, lingering near the revolving doors. Hey, I said, catching her attention. Thank you for stepping in. She gave a small nod. I couldn't just stand there. My name's Karen, no jokes. Please, I work on the 15th floor. I'm Marcus, I said. And don't worry, I save my jokes for people who deserve them. You've seen him do this before, haven't you? Her lips pressed together. Not exactly like that. But yeah, he's aggressive. Especially with delivery guys, maintenance staff, and she hesitated. Black men. I've noticed it more than once. I pulled a small notebook from my jacket pocket. Can I quote you on that? She glanced toward the reception desk, then back at me. Not with my name attached, but I'll tell you what I've seen. We moved to a quieter corner near the elevators. Karen spoke quickly, glancing over her shoulder every few sentences. She told me about Hawkins questioning a black IT contractor for 10 minutes before letting him into the server room, even though the guy had a work order. About a Latino delivery driver who left shaking after Hawkins refused to let him unload packages until someone from the office came down. About the time Hawkins called the police on a black teenage boy for sitting in the lobby too long, even though the kid was waiting for his aunt. I jotted everything down. Patterns. Always patterns. When she finished, Karen looked at me like she wasn't sure whether she'd done the right thing. You're really going to write about this? Absolutely, I said. And I'm not stopping until the story's too big to ignore. I spent the next 2 hours working the building like a crime scene. Every janitor, receptionist, and mail clerk became a potential witness. Most were hesitant, glancing around before speaking in hushed tones. A few flat out refused, shaking their heads as if my questions were dangerous. One man, a wiry custodian named Raphael, spoke to me in the supply closet, the smell of cleaning chemicals sharp in the air. Hawkins, he said, voice low. He's been here 5 years. I've seen him stop people for nothing. Not white people. Always black or brown. Ever report it? I asked. He gave a bitter laugh. To who? His boss. They're friends. I need this job, man. I understood. Fear keeps mouths shut. That's why my badge mattered, not just to get into places, but to protect the people who couldn't speak for themselves. By the time I left the building, I had pages of notes and a half-dozen anonymous accounts. Enough to start, not enough to finish. Back at my apartment, I sat up at the kitchen table, the glow of my laptop screen washing over the clutter of takeout boxes and old press passes. My jaw still ached from the punch, a dull reminder of the morning. I opened a new document and began typing. Security guard targets black visitors, and this time, he picked the wrong one. The words poured out the blow-by-blow of what happened, the witness statements, the pattern of harassment. I cross-referenced dates and times, piecing together a timeline that painted Hawkins not as an overzealous guard, but as a serial abuser of authority. Halfway through, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Mr. Ellison, a deep voice said when I answered. This is a friend. You should stop what you're doing. I leaned back in my chair. A friend? You have an interesting way of showing it. You're making trouble for yourself. Hawkins is protected. By who? Silence. Then, just drop it. For your own good. The line went dead. I stared at the phone for a moment, then hit record on my voice memo app and repeated the conversation aloud. If someone was trying to scare me off, that meant I was onto something. By nightfall, the article draft was sitting at 3,000 words. I had the facts, but I needed to fire the kind of detail that made people share a story until it reached places management couldn't control. That's when my inbox pinged. Subject, you don't know the half of it. The email was from an anonymous address. No greeting, no name, just a single attachment. A security camera still, time-stamped from 3 months ago. It showed Hawkins with his arm pinned against the chest of a young black man, shoving him against a wall in the same lobby I'd been in this morning. The man's face was twisted in pain. Beneath the photo, one sentence. There's video. Meet me tomorrow, 9 a.m., corner of 5th and Bay. I leaned back, the weight of the day catching up to me. The story was getting bigger. Much bigger. The next morning, the city was still shaking off the remnants of dawn when I arrived at the corner of 5th and Bay. The air smelled faintly of rain, the kind that had fallen overnight and left slick patches on the sidewalk. Traffic hummed in the distance, and the occasional bus hissed to a stop nearby. I was 10 minutes early, a habit that's both a virtue and a curse in my line of work. You learn to show up ahead of time so you can read the scene before the scene reads you. At 9:03, a man emerged from the shadows of a recessed doorway. He was tall, mid-50s, with graying dreadlocks pulled back into a low ponytail. A faded army jacket hung loosely on his frame. He scanned the street before walking toward me. You Marcus? He asked, his voice low and gravelly. That's me, I said. He didn't offer a name. Instead, he pulled a small USB drive from his jacket pocket and held it out. What you saw yesterday. That's nothing. Hawkins has been doing this for years. I took the drive, feeling its light weight. You recorded it? I didn't have to, he said. The building's cameras did. I used to work maintenance there. Had access to the security archives. Saw too much. I slid the drive into my coat pocket. So why give this to me now? His gaze hardened. Because last year, my nephew was the one in that picture I sent you. Hawkins roughed him up for waiting on his girlfriend in the lobby. They fired me 2 weeks later. Said it was downsizing. I studied his face. The anger there was deep, but so was the exhaustion. You want justice? I want the truth out, he said simply. They think no one will care. Prove them wrong. Back at my apartment, I plugged the USB into my laptop. The folder inside was labeled Incidents. My pulse quickened as I opened it. There were 22 video files, each with a date and timestamp. I started with the most recent. The footage played in grainy black and white. The camera angle was fixed high above the lobby, capturing Hawkins standing near the entrance. A young black man walked in, wearing a delivery uniform and carrying a package. Hawkins stopped him, gestured toward the front desk, then stepped into his path. When the man tried to walk around, Hawkins shoved him hard, causing the package to fall. The next video showed Hawkins confronting a black woman in a business suit, blocking her from the elevator until she produced 3 forms of ID. Another clip showed him following 2 Latino teenagers out of the building, muttering something under his breath before pointing toward the street. By the time I reached the 5th video, my stomach was tight. This wasn't overzealous security. This was targeted harassment, systematic and deliberate. But the 6th video stopped me cold. It was from 18 months ago. Hawkins had a man pinned against the wall, his forearm pressed into the man's chest. The victim was gasping, hands raised. No one intervened. The date stamp matched the one in the still image I'd been sent. I watched it 3 times, memorizing the angle, the expressions, the way Hawkins glanced toward the camera, and then away like he knew exactly what it saw and didn't care. I spent the afternoon cross-referencing the incidents with building visitor logs. It took hours, But the pattern was undeniable. Nearly all the confrontations were with people of color. The few white individuals Hawkins had stopped were let go quickly, often with a handshake or a smile. By evening, my article had grown to over 5,000 words. The evidence was damning. But evidence alone doesn't make people pay attention, stories do. That's when I decided to call an old friend. "Lena," I said when she picked up, "I've got something big. Racist security guard, 24 incidents, all on tape. I need it on the front page." "Marcus," she said, her voice wary. "You know my editor hates going after private security firms. Too much legal risk. Then let's give him a reason to take the risk. I'll give you exclusive video rights." There was a long pause. "Send me the files. I'll see what I can do." The next morning, I woke to a pounding on my door. When I opened it, 2 uniformed police officers were standing in the hallway. "Marcus Ellison?" one asked. "That's me. You're under arrest for trespassing and obstruction of security operations." I actually laughed. "You've got to be kidding me." "Sir, please turn around and place your hands behind your back." They cuffed me right there in my doorway. Neighbors peeked out from behind their doors. Someone whispered my name. At the station, they took my phone, my notebook, everything. I sat in a holding cell for 3 hours before a familiar voice called my name. Lena stood outside the bars, flanked by a public defender I'd never met. "You're out," she said. Once we were in the lobby, she leaned in. "They're trying to shut you up. The security firm filed a complaint, said you were interfering with their personnel. Total garbage, but it's enough to tie you up in court if you're not careful." I rubbed my wrists where the cuffs had been. "Then we publish faster." Her eyes flickered with hesitation. "Marcus, my editor, pulled the plug this morning. Said it's too risky. He won't run it." For a moment, the world felt smaller, tighter. "Then I'll run it myself." That night, I uploaded every video, every document, every statement to an encrypted server. I started a live blog, releasing 1 clip every hour with context and timestamps. The first post went live at 8 p.m. By midnight, it had been shared 4,000 times. By morning, it was trending on social media under the hashtag #HawkinsExposed. Messages flooded my inbox. Former employees, past victims, even a few current staff members who wanted to talk anonymously, of course. But with the attention came threats. My phone lit up with unknown numbers, blocked calls, vague messages about accidents that could happen. I documented everything. On the 3rd day, a video surfaced that I hadn't seen before. It wasn't from the USB. It was shaky cell phone footage, clearly recorded in secret. In it, Hawkins sat in a bar, laughing with 2 other security guards. The audio was muffled, but clear enough to catch phrases like, "Keep 'em in their place," and "They scare easy." The clip spread faster than any of my uploads. By noon, it had over 1 million views. That's when the building's management finally issued a statement. "We take these allegations seriously and have placed Officer Hawkins on indefinite leave pending investigation." It wasn't enough. Not nearly enough. Because by then, people were calling for more than suspension. They wanted systemic change, oversight, accountability, consequences. And I wasn't going to stop until they got it. 2 weeks later, I found myself in the most crowded city council chamber I'd ever seen. The air buzzed with the mix of anticipation and outrage, reporters jostling for camera angles, activists holding signs, curious onlookers leaning forward in their seats. At the front, a long oak table separated the council members from the rest of us. Behind them, the city seal hung like a silent reminder of the ideals this place was supposed to uphold. This was more than a meeting. It was a hearing, one called in response to the growing uproar over Hawkins Exposed. And somehow, I'd been called to testify. When my name was announced, I walked to the witness table. My heart was steady, but my hands gripped the edge of my folder a little tighter than I wanted to admit. The chairwoman, a sharp-eyed woman with silver streaks in her hair, leaned toward her microphone. "Mr. Ellison, you were the initial source of the videos and allegations against Officer D. Hawkins. Please state, for the record, your account." I opened the folder and began. "I am a journalist. On the morning of May 12th, I entered the lobby of the Branton building for a scheduled interview. Before I could speak a word, Officer Hawkins struck me in the face." A low murmur rippled through the chamber. I didn't pause. Over the next 48 hours, I documented not only my own assault, but over 20 incidents of similar behavior by Hawkins, each targeting Black or Latino individuals. I obtained security footage, visitor logs, and statements from multiple witnesses. I slid a stack of printed screenshots across the table to the council members. These are stills from the videos. Each incident shows a pattern of racial profiling, intimidation, and, in some cases, physical assault. The chairwoman glanced at them, her jaw tightening. And you are certain of the authenticity of these videos? Beyond certain, I said. Most came directly from the building's own security system. Others from eyewitnesses. None have been altered. Another council member, a man with a crisp suit and a hint of skepticism in his voice, leaned forward. Mr. Ellison, why not take this to the police first? I met his gaze. Because I've been a reporter in this city for 12 years. I know how slow internal channels move. I've seen too many cases buried in ongoing investigations until the public forgets. I wasn't going to let that happen here. A few people in the gallery clapped before being shushed. Then they called him. Hawkins entered wearing the same uniform from the videos, minus his badge and sidearm. His face was a careful mask, no smirk, no scowl, just the neutral stare of a man told to behave. He sat across from me at the witness table. For the first time, our eyes met without a crowd around us. I wondered if he saw the same thing I did, a collision we both knew would end here. Officer Hawkins, the chairwoman began. Do you dispute the events Mr. Ellison has described? Yes, ma'am, he said. These videos have been taken out of context. My job is to keep that building secure. I treat everyone the same, regardless of race. A scoff came from somewhere in the gallery. The chairwoman raised an eyebrow. Even in the video where you are seen shoving a delivery worker without provocation? He ignored my instructions, Hawkins said flatly. And in the video where you held a young man against the wall? He matched the description of a suspect we'd been told to watch for. I leaned toward the microphone. Then why, officer, is there no incident report for that day? Why didn't you call the police if you believed he was a suspect? For the first time, his composure cracked. Because I handled it. The room erupted gasps, whispers, the rustle of papers. The chairwoman banged her gavel. Order. The council deliberated for nearly an hour while the rest of us waited. Hawkins sat across from me, jaw set, staring at some invisible point past my shoulder. I wondered if he was thinking about the crowd outside, chanting for his removal. Finally, the council returned. The chairwoman's voice was firm. Based on the evidence presented, Officer D. Hawkins is hereby banned from employment in any security capacity within the city limits. Furthermore, we are recommending that the district attorney's office review these incidents for possible criminal charges. The crowd exploded into applause. Some people stood. A few hugged. I didn't move. I just sat there, watching Hawkins as the words landed. For the first time, he looked small, like the walls he'd built around himself had been stripped away. Outside, the press swarmed. Microphones were shoved toward me, questions flying from every direction. What's your reaction to the ruling? Do you think this sets a precedent? Are you worried about retaliation? I raised my press badge so the cameras could see it. This was never just about me. This was about everyone who's been silenced because they didn't have a badge, a platform, or a crowd. Today, the city told them they matter. And to anyone still abusing their authority, consider this your warning. That line would make the evening news. That night, I walked back into the Branton building lobby. Not because I had business there, but because I wanted to see it one last time. The marble floor gleamed under the lights. The security desk was manned by a new officer, a young woman who greeted me with a polite smile. No suspicion, no barked orders, no demand for extra ID. For a moment, I just stood there, listening to the low hum of the elevators and the muffled conversations from upstairs. It felt different, lighter. But I knew better than to think the fight was over. This was one victory in a much bigger war. Tomorrow, somewhere else, someone like Hawkins would decide they had the right to decide who belongs. And maybe, just maybe, someone like me would be there to say, a big mistake. Later that week, I filed my final piece for the series. It wasn't about Hawkins anymore, it was about the people who'd come forward, the patterns in other buildings, the calls for oversight. I ended it with a line I'd been carrying since the day of the punch. Justice doesn't start in a courtroom. It starts the moment you refuse to stay silent. The article went viral. City officials announced new training requirements for all private security firms. Anonymous tip lines were set up. And in the weeks that followed, I got messages from strangers not just in my city, but from across the country sharing their own stories, asking how to fight back. I told them the same thing I tell myself every time I step into a room where I'm not wanted. Don't give them the ending they expect. 1 month later, as I was heading into a coffee shop, someone tapped my shoulder. I turned to see Karen, the woman from the lobby that first day. They fired him, she said without preamble. Officially. No coming back. I smiled. Good. She hesitated, then added, you know, people talk about you in the building now. Not just what you did, but how you did it. Calm. Direct. You made it impossible to look away. That's the job, I said. No, she said, shaking her head. That's courage. She left before I could respond. As I sipped my coffee, I thought about the first second after that punch, the shock, the heat, the decision to stay calm when I could have fought back. That decision had started a chain reaction I couldn't have predicted. And maybe that's the point. You never know who's watching, who's learning, who's going to carry the fight forward when you're gone. I tucked my press badge back into my jacket. Tomorrow would bring another story, another injustice, another person who needed someone to shine a light on the dark corners. And I'd be ready, because I wasn't just a journalist. I was a reminder to them, to myself, to anyone watching, that the truth, once seen, can't be unseen. And that no matter how loud the fist, the badge will always speak louder. Thank you for listening. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe to follow the next stories.